Welcome to Stories That Stay, how stories of identity shape us. This is a podcast where healing happens at the intersection of art, science, and storytelling. I'm Shamm, Petros, a therapist, learning strategist, refugee, and budding creative.
And I'm Dwight Dunston, a writer, musician, theater maker, and conflict tender. Stories That Stay podcast is a project of Lion Story. In this episode, our guest, Rain Pryor, will share with us her own personal experiences, and Shamm and I will share practical tools and reflective questions to help you, our listeners, and Rain navigate identity and difference with more clarity and less fear. So whether you're an educator, organizer, artist, or someone simply trying to make sense of what you've been feeling in the world around you, you're in the right place.
And in our second season, we continue to explore stories of resilience, rupture, and repair, guided by people who have found language for their truths. We always warn our guests and our listeners that it will get emotional, but for us, that is the point. Emotions are your superpower.
Our guest is already here in the studio. Welcome, Rain.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Rain.
So great to have you with us today. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
You got us all smiling. And to honor this moment and the stories that Rain is about to share, we will take some breaths together. This will help us all prepare for the feelings, emotions, and truths that will emerge. For you listening, wherever you are, walking, driving, resting, cooking, getting ready for the day, I invite you to take a few breaths just for yourself as we share an audio brief. And remember, keep breathing, especially throughout the episode.
Rain Pryor, you are what I call a quadruple threat: singer, actor, writer, director. Like, come on now. There's so much that you bring to the creative practice. And knowing that you know our executive director, Lisa, who's also feels like this quadruple.
Yes, she is. Yes.
Oh my goodness. I can't imagine y'all two in the same space just popping off.
And yes, you star in the film Spinsters, Brewster Millions, Christmas on BET, co-starred into 2026 on The Neighborhood. And help me out here, the film Dune?
Doing. Mm-hmm.
Dune. Thank you. And you won awards and received accolades for your outstanding acting and writing.
I'm curious if there's anything else you want to add here at the top of our time from your bio before we jump into the conversation today. Anything about?
I have a play that I wrote that is going to be having a showcase, equity showcase, a small production in New York City this year. So that's really exciting and a testament to keeping it moving in a crazy world.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Congratulations. What's the play called?
Pass the Matza. And it's based on my solo show, Fried Chicken and Latkes, where a Black Jewish girl decides to invite her Black father and grandmother to Passover dinner at her Jewish and white grandparents' house.
Okay, I'm ready.
Wow. And that sounds rich, especially as we begin this storytelling. I'm like, right. Woo! Rich.
And while our conversation today is focused on a primary question, we have an opening and closing question we'd like to ask all our guests before. So at the top of our time together, I want to ask of you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed do you feel about sharing your story today? 1 being not at all, 10 being very stressed.
Say maybe a 4, because when you're in anticipation, I think that adds to stress a little, but it's not negative. I think sometimes my stress and excitement go hand in hand, if that makes sense.
Yes, the actual definition of stress also includes excitement, right? So
Right.
thank you. You are out of 4. And we'll ask you the same question at the end of your story sharing today. Thank you for sharing. We're so honored to guide and listen and be present in the conversation today. And I'm going to pass it over to my dear friend and co-host, Dwight, to take us through the next part of our conversation.
Beautiful. And our listeners, I'm sure you are well aware of the question we ask, and we prepped you, Rain, for this question. Before we dive into Rain's story, we want to offer a quick note on context for our listeners. As many of you know, Rain is the daughter of legendary comedian and actor Richard Pryor. Growing up as a Black girl in Beverly Hills during the 1970s brought a unique, highly visible set of tensions, juxtaposed against the stark realities of systemic racism. When Rain shares her first story, she mentions 2 deeply heavy, traumatic events in rapid succession. This is the right and power of the storyteller. As facilitators, Shamm and I's focus in the moment was to help Rain slow down, breathe, and process the somatic weight of those memories using Dr. Stevenson's CLCBE. But for you listening, we want to name the historical weight of those events. All across our country, Black families faced intense racial terror in many parts of the country in the 60s and 70s, though many white Americans believe that racial terror was specific to the southern part of the United States. Rain's experiences show that racial terror was highly visible, even in places like Southern California. Keep that broader backdrop in mind as Rain walks us through how those early experiences still live in her body today. Want to just ask you this question and then pass the microphone to you, Rain, but wondering if you can share what the earliest memories of race or difference of any kind that you recall.
The earliest awareness of race and difference. It's funny because this is the stuff I write about and I create. So I would say the earliest difference for me is 5 years old running down the street on Cannon Drive in Beverly Hills being chased by a kid calling me the N-word and hiding in bushes. And then after that, we had crosses burned on our front lawn. So those are my earliest memories of race.
I think we could all give applause here, listeners and everyone in the studio with us today, as to receive what you just shared.
Listeners, I'm taking a pause here as a mediator and facilitator and someone who was in education for a long time. When a guest shares something from their childhood as terrifying as cross burnings on their lawn, every instinct in me was to ask what happened, how were you and your loved ones kept safe in this moment, what happened next? Is there any more that you want to share in this space here today? And while we didn't press Rain for the full timeline of the events of her experiences, what mattered most for our time together was tracking how those early disruptions created a physical ripple effect across decades. Rain carries these moments not just as history, but as ongoing bodywork, self-talk, and creative fuel. Yeah, it's deep to talk to artists and notice what they bring, because that was so pithy, right? You're like, this is what I write about. This is what I make art about.
Yeah.
What we're going to do here with that story is be with it in a particular kind of way, and just to be able to give it more breadth and allow you to add some more context and details if you wish.
Yes.
Just really holding, right? So just to slow it down, just the remembering, the retelling. Curious if you can share, what are the emotions when you think about this early memory? And if you can, on a scale from 1 to 10, calculate the intensity of the emotion. So 1's being like, I feel this emotion like a tiny bit. 10 being like, when I retell this story or when I remember these early memories, that feeling that I have is enormous, all consuming. It moves through every fiber of my body. Just share with us some of the feelings and calculate them.
It's so interesting that you ask about the feelings, because when I was done just saying that little bit, my eyes watered up. not as necessarily because I was so sad, but I think in the presence of what we're living in right now, I'm really affected by what I see, what I hear, what I feel. I feel sometimes exhaustion from having to explain my story or trying to be heard and navigating the times that we're in creatively because of race and religion or perspective. So I'm feeling all the feelings. Like I said, it's not really sadness, but I think I wish I didn't have to have gone through that in order to share my story. Yeah, it comes with so much. Like, I don't even know, like, it's a lot. That's all I'm saying. It's a lot. And holding space for that, it's a lot sometimes.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And one of the words I heard you name, one of the feelings is exhaustion. Just curious if you wanted to start there, if you wanted to scale exhaustion, 1 being minuscule, 10 being I'm exhausted, overwhelmingly exhausted.
I'm overwhelmingly exhausted. It's about a 10.
Yeah.
It didn't feel that way for a very long time. It has felt that way in the last 3 years. It's at a level now where I take rest to woosah and to breathe and to step away from and step out of. Also, the reason, again, why I say I create what I create.
Yes.
So
that exhaustion at a 10, and maybe also because it's at a 10, maybe we just take a moment to just breathe into that exhaustion. Take a breath in and out. Curious if you notice any other feelings.
There's resentment.
Say more about it and scale it for us, 1 to 10.
Yes, I will say resentment for feeling that this version of story is not done. And that would be a 7, 8, depending on the day. Right now. Yeah. There's resentment for what would it be like? Resentment for I had to go through that and still in many ways go through that. Resentment for the structures in place, systemic racism, systemic things that I can't control, that I wish I could control. So, yeah.
For our listeners and for you, Rain, I'm going to walk you through this process and then we'll have some more space for you to just be with all the things. So you mentioned the exhaustion at a 10, that resentment at a 7 or 8. I'm curious about locating these feelings physically, if it's available. Do they show up anywhere physiologically? Do you notice anything about the body?
Yes, I do.
Like your eyes? I'm curious if there's other ways these feelings are alive for you.
They happen in my chest. My chest gets tight. It happens in my stomach. Will get kind of knotty or I feel shaky. So I'm one of those, and I'm sure there's a listener or yourselves that can relate. When things are untrue, I shake. It's a visceral response I have to untruth. When it's truthful, it more gets planted, whether it's in my stomach or my chest tightens. So those are the ways for me, or like leaky eyes, like you wonder like, why is this affecting me this way? That's how it presents itself. I could say in an even a deeper way, I feel that I'm a survivor of breast cancer, and I believe those feelings contributed to that. And inflammation in my body, I feel, is part of the feelings I carry in the world. And that's why I really try my best. And I hate the word try. I do practice self-care, a lot of self-care, and work on myself so that I can release a lot of that as much as possible. And then I feel that shift in my body. I feel more energized, sometimes even more creative.
How generous you were bringing Shamm and I and our listeners into the physical experience, right? The noticing the eyes watering, that happened as soon as you started sharing, right? But the chest being tight, the stomach being knotty, the shakiness, and this really resonated with me when you said, when things are untrue, I shake. I didn't know that's what was happening in those moments when I'm in the midst of untruth, but that language, right? I shake when there's untruth. yeah, the ways that you've made this connection being a survivor of breast cancer and how these feelings live in the body, right? And the practices you've taken up to make sure you move these things through physically, the physical sensation of these feelings, right? The stress. And we'll come back to that as well. But so powerful, Rain. So powerful. The next question is about, and you already have started to bring us into it, when being with an early memory of race or difference, we invite folks to share any self-talk. So any things you remember saying to yourself from the early memory, or any things in the retelling that you're saying to yourself. Even brought us into some of that, right? You're resentful that this story it's not over yet. This is not over. That might be a thing you're also saying to yourself as you're processing. Any other self-talk or images coming to mind?
The self-talk that I do, never really happened as a young person. I didn't know. I wasn't taught that. So, other than, be Black and proud. As an adult, 57 years old, what I do when those old type of feelings, even if they integrate with the new perspective on the world, what I do is remind myself that that situation to me is not happening now, that it's a past experience that I went through, and I tell that little girl that I love her and that it's okay, and that this version of myself at 57 can take care of her and can love her through that, and it's okay. That's how I do my due to navigate and to self-talk the good vibes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm beautiful, I'm strong, I'm talented, I'm courageous, I'm resilient, I'm powerful, I'm truthful. Yeah.
Yeah, powerful. There's this whole other level of work that, Shamm was my trainer learning this skill, and Dr. Stevenson was Shamm's trainer, and you're really modeling this. We talk a lot about redos, right? And what would we say to our maybe younger selves in these moments of stress? And, it's so obvious of the work, the heart work, the spiritual work, the somatic work that you've taken up to be with these experiences. Like, one of the other self-talk things that we sort of captured was this, I wish I didn't have to go through that to share my story, right? Was like one thing you mentioned. And this as an artist, these stories have now become your art, your creativity, right? And so that's part of the catharsis, that's part of the healing, the transmuting, and this thing you get to say to yourself, right? I love this beautiful Black little girl. I got you. I got your back. I'm here. So powerful. Yeah. Any other images or self-talk before we take another breath together and I invite Shamm in to just share some thoughts?
Not that I can think of off the top right now.
So you shared so much, Rain, and I want to invite you and our listeners to do another intentional breath here. We'll breathe in for a 4 count, and then breathe out for 6, and then we'll invite Shamm in just for some more reflection. So let's take a breath in and out. Let's do that one more time. Breath in. Thank you, Rain, for that storytelling and just letting us walk with you for a little bit. And Shamm, come on in.
I'm just seeing the brilliance of your not only survival, but creation, expression. What we just took you through is a mindfulness strategy. We call this CLCBE. C is calculate all your emotions on a scale of 1 to 10. L is located in your body. And you did that with such great efficiency. That one's particularly tough for some folks. But not only were you able to identify your chest and stomach, but exactly what was going on, right? The tightness, the knottiness. The self-talk, your very coached, proclaimed, programmed self-talk that you had to give yourself over the years, which is incredible because some of us have already natural self-talk that is messaging from others, media, and maybe a voice that is not their own, right? And your self-talk and this brilliance is taking care of that most vulnerable part of you. Is offering protection, right? And hope that this version of you is prepared and able to care. Brilliance, we find that some people's self-talk is really centered around maybe even protecting the offender, right? Or
Mhm.
diluting the impact of the experience so they can survive that moment. And I know what stands in front of us today in the studio, it's decades of hard work internally.
Yeah. I just want to be transparent. I also am in trauma therapy to work through all this stuff. You have to apply it. Like, I can't just talk about it. I have to be willing to apply it if I want to change and feel internally powerful.
And the right therapy, I always tell people, expands time too, you know? It's like time travel in a way, especially when we're talking about trauma.
Yes, yes.
You know, we've trained thousands of people. We've interviewed several people. I get excited by patterns. There's certain professions that are resistant. Some of them surprisingly are mental health professionals, right? Former leaders, and even in some way or another, professional storytellers, whether you're an executive or professor or a journalist, right? You may be adequate at telling a story, but to field it, gain authorship, make meaning out of it, reauthor it is a completely different skill set. And I can't help but assume that your artistry gives you those skills as well.
My artistry and spirituality practice does as well.
Yes, absolutely. I can deeply relate to that as well. I'm not sure if this is intuitive or something hard learned and studied, but when your intuition, I heard intuition speaking to how holding stress, especially around identity and race, impacted your breast cancer diagnosis and experience. I want to read to you, I'm not sure if you know about this study. It was done by the American Journal of Epidemiology in 2007 by several authors, but led by Dr. Taylor Williams. It studied how racism is potentially tied to breast cancer in Black women.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is mind-blowing to me.
And I'll share the article. It was very comprehensive. They studied over 59,000 African American women for 6 years and
Wow.
found those that have reported higher incidence of racial discrimination had a higher risk of breast cancer diagnosis, especially those under the age of 50. And there's so many times, you know, our intuition is accurate, but the world has not yet affirmed it, right? The journals, the doctors, whomever it may be, although we are the experts in our own lives.
Yes.
And there's several other studies, but this one's particularly salient to what you brought up today. And I just wanted to make sure you also had this affirmation for yourself.
Thank you. I
So
received that.
I just want to validate those personal truths and truths that have also now been researched and supported. That it does. Yeah, if you're up to reading that journal entry, I invite you to do so. I can send it to you. It is profound, and we use that a lot in our work because sometimes we need to confirm people's cognitions before we're given permission to enter work emotionally with folks. Where, you know, our work is emotion first.
Right.
That's the data we need. It is critical data about what we need and what the world needs. And how we survive it is usually an intersection of our brilliance and what was available to us.
Understood.
I want to affirm that for you and for our listeners. Just met, but how proud I am of you. I can't wait to see your play and read your work. It is profound.
Ashe, thank you. Received.
Thank you. Providing a model for our listeners, you know, after sharing your story now and using CLCBE. Calculate your emotions and scale them, locate it in your body, communicate self-talk, communicate any imageries, breathe, an extra long intentional exhale. I like to do BECLCB because that breath is a gift. But I do want to ask you, Rain, after sharing your story, how stressed do you feel, 1 to 10?
Maybe 3, 2, 3. I feel good.
They went down a little bit. You started at 4, went down a little bit.
Yeah. I think for myself, anytime I get to share in a very authentic way, it removes stress, it removes anxiety, it removes tension. You know, my shoulders go down a little. I can feel that, you know, you're in the right place feeling. And I like that. And then again, that also is what then ends up igniting my creativity and how I'm going to go about the rest of my day. So, yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Beautiful. That's always my goal. Oftentimes we're teaching people how to identify their stress, describe it in detail, use different interventions and strategies to recalibrate, right?
Yeah.
And then get into their imagination. It's the hardest thing. We use stories to allow adults to play. Dwight alluded to it, but if you could reimagine that moment, how would it be restructured? Who would be there for you? What would have been said? Imagination, I think, is so key. It's not just about healing, but it's also living a life worth living.
Absolutely.
A gift to be in conversation with you, Rain, and a gift for our listeners is a gift, is an honor.
Thank you.
Last question we'll ask, if you want to give this experience, this memory, this story a title, what would it be?
Peeling away the layers of the onion.
Peeling away the layers of the onion.
Peeling away the layers of the onion. On the surface, it's a familiar phrase. But as we sat with everything Rain shared, from her trauma therapy and spiritual practices to her somatic self-care after surviving breast cancer, we realized how fitting that image really is for her journey. Healing isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice of curiosity, reflection, and stripping away old layers of shame. Rain isn't just telling a story about what happened to her at 5 years old. She is actively doing the work to protect and love that little girl. I love that. I love that title. Thank you. And for our listeners, as we close, we invite you to take a few closing breaths with us together. While we're taking them together, these are just for you as you transition away from this conversation, from hearing Rain's courageous storytelling, as you close down this podcast and turn to what your day holds next. We just want to invite you to slow down, take a few breaths, notice if there are things swirling around, feelings, emotions, sensations, just to bring some attention to your body, to your experience, as a way to honor wherever you are, however you are in this moment. So let's take a few moments to take some breaths.
I just want to co-sign and amplify listeners, guests. Just start noticing today your body, your thoughts, your emotions. Try hard not to then categorize these noticings or correct for them. But noticing how you are moved and shaped by stories, because we should be moved and shaped by stories of each other's stories.
I know I struggled at times to be the podcast co-host and to be the trainer and facilitator of resilience literacy. This work is not easy to do. It's not easy to balance being in this role. I just felt so grateful for the pacing and in tone setting and groundedness that Rain brought to our conversation. In the end, Shamm and I made the choice to follow Rain's lead, to not press, to make space for whatever she wanted to share, to be witnessed and held. We just wanted to provide a little bit extra context for you, the listener, so that you understand the context from which Rain is speaking from. Thank you so much for listening to this and holding this story with us.
And I want to thank all of our listeners so much for tuning in to Stories That Stay, Stories of Identity Shape Us. This podcast is a project of Lion Story. To learn about Lion Story in our trainings and workshops and resources, please visit thelionstory.org. And that is thelionstory.org. So 2 S's there. This episode of Stories That Stay was produced and edited by Petros Toscano. And music during our mindful moment comes from Dwight Dunston himself. Other music we use comes from epidemicsound.com. And you can always find the show notes and transcripts of these episodes on storiesthatstay.net or just heading to our website, thelionstory.org, and finding the dedicated place for our podcast. Thank you again for joining us. We're here to help you build the real courage, practical language, and skills to navigate discomfort or stress and trauma with clarity and compassion for yourself. If you found value in today's episode or any of our episodes the last 2 seasons, please share them with someone who needs it. May that be a friend or even a colleague. And if you haven't done so yet, I do invite you to review and subscribe to Stories That Stay. We are grateful eternally for your support. You help this community grow. Your support turns our research into practical tools and trainings and offerings for the people particularly for the people who need them the most.
So until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep telling your story. And remember, you are your most important listener.